It's Super Bowl weekend. Here we are. Finally, we made it. The NFL awards were Thursday night. The Hall of Fame class was announced. We're going to talk about all the guys that won awards, getting their gold jackets, but also maybe some of the guys who got snubbed in both situations right here in the Locked On NFL podcast. And of course, we'll give you a preview of the Super Bowl. Rams, Bengals. It's going down. We're breaking it down right here on the Locked On NFL podcast. It's the Friday edition. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On NFL podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We bring you your daily dose of everything on the NFL. You can subscribe to this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. Be sure to check out the Locked On NFL YouTube channel. We don't just have this show, we have all of our NFL content, clips from the top clips of each day from different shows. If you've been subscribing to this channel, if you haven't subscribed right now, hit the like button in this video if you enjoy it. You want to subscribe to this channel to get all of our great content, including clips from some of your favorite teams every single day right here on YouTube for free. Today's episode is brought to you by the Get Upside app. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code TOUCHDOWN and get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first fill up. Now, as you can tell, Chris Carter here, solo hosting today. Unfortunately, Q's had some technical difficulties while he's been in LA, so I'm going to be running the show solo today. But I got you. Don't sweat it. We're going to get through this show, no problem. Even though, listen, Raider Nation. I know there's no. Hey, wait, you're not Raider Nation. You're Raider Region. There's no Q to even push back on me right now. I get to call you whatever I want. Take that, Raiders fans. Anyways, and Q don't get to make light skin jokes about me. Look at me. I'm free. Freedom. It's finally here. But let's break down what the big night was as far as the awards. Now, some of the awards, not really that surprising. Aaron Rodgers wins his fourth NFL MVP award. I mean, was the guy awesome most of the year? Yep. But once again, folded in the playoffs. Tough situation to be in if you're Aaron Rodgers. And again, didn't even get to the NFC Championship game, and also declined to comment as far as his future in that situation. It's going to be another long, drawn out process this offseason. Will he stay with Green Bay? Who knows? I mean, his offensive coordinators now there's former offensive coordinators now the head coach in Denver. Will he go there? Will he go somewhere else? Will he just say, hey, let's do it again here? We did have a pretty good team. A lot of questions about Aaron Rodgers, but certainly deserving of the MVP award, though some people might say that Cooper Kupp should have been in that conversation because he did win Offensive Player of the Year, but and most deservedly, he had a phenomenal year at wide receiver. I'm really intrigued to see if Cooper Kupp kind of becomes the next long-standing superstar wide receiver, because we've seen Devontae Adams rises up for a year, DeAndre Hopkins rises up for a year, but there was really a 6-year period where Antonio Brown was the definitive best receiver in football. In those 6 years, no other receiver put on put on a better combined 6 years of production than him. I'm really intrigued to see if Cooper Kupp is able to stick with Matt Stafford for a long time. What kind of dominance does he bring there? So I thought those two awards were fine. No problems with them whatsoever. Aaron Rodgers, lit it up for most of the year, and you based the overall production of the award in that. I also had no problem with Defensive Player of the Year, T.J. Watt. And it was not even close. He had 40 votes there were 45 or 48 total voters. What else did he need to do? He tied the NFL sack record. He was the biggest reason the Steelers won. The only games they won were games that he played in. I think it was 60% or more of the snaps of those games. Anytime he played less, they lost the game or tied it. that just shows you what he did for the Pittsburgh Steelers. As a guy who covers the Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, he's been phenomenal. He doesn't just rush the quarterback. He stuffs the run. He blocks passes. He sets everyone else up. Scored a touchdown in the playoffs. Was the only reason the Steelers even had a chance for 5 seconds against the Kansas City Chiefs. That's how good that guy is. And he deserves a Defensive Player of the Year. I thought it was really cool that his brother J.J. Watt got to present to him. So didn't have any problems with this one. Also, didn't really have, I mean, really, most of these awards were they were straight up for me. I didn't have any problems with it. Jamar Chase. What other rookie were you giving the Offensive Rookie of the Year to? Nobody, right? I mean, he was just unstoppable. I mean, what him and Joe Burrow were putting together were just another level of offense, and we're about to see them in the Super Bowl. Also, shout out to the Bengals. They get 2 awards on the weekend that they're getting ready to play in the Super Bowl. Jamar Chase wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. Joe Burrow wins Comeback Player of the Year. But I'm going to come back to the Comeback Player of the Year award in just a second here. Look what I did here. You see what I did? Yes, I did that. That's what I did. But anyway, Q would slap me if he was on that show for that joke. I miss him. I know I just screamed freedom into the microphone, but I miss Q. It's sad. He's my friend, my buddy, my partner in crime, and he can't be on this show with me. Jeez. Anyways, get focused, Carter. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Micah Parsons. Again, who else were you really giving it to? He even got Defensive Player of the Year votes, which I thought he earned to be in that conversation with him and Aaron Donald, the only other guys to get votes. Myles Garrett didn't get any votes. I wonder what's up with that, Q. I thought you said that Myles Garrett was going to win that award. Haha, no, Q's long apologized for that argument that we had. But in all seriousness, I did think that was interesting. Now, here are my 2 biggest gripes of the awards given out. Comeback Player of the Year, Joe Burrow. Not that Joe Burrow doesn't deserve it, but when you're a comeback Player of the Year, what was Joe Burrow coming back to? His year last year was, he was just getting destroyed, the whole year. I felt like Dak Prescott should have deserved the Comeback Player of the Year. Just me. Again, this isn't like something grievous, like I'm carrying my pitchforks to the NFL headquarters and saying, "Oh, you dissed Dak Prescott," but I am saying, Joe Burrow. He was a rookie last year, and like he looked okay at times, but he was getting slaughtered. And was he really back? It'd be different if Joe Burrow was dominant last year. It'd be different if he had a year like he did this year and then got hurt at the end of it and then came back next year and did it. And that would have been different. For me, Dak, we've seen Dak be dominant in this league. We've seen him produce at a high level, and then he's been hurt and he came back. And then he was back, and look what he did for the Cowboys, even though they still didn't win the playoff game. Oh, poor Dallas. And then Coach of the Year. And, I was looking at this award, and at first I was like, oh, yeah, Mike Vrabel. That makes sense. But then I thought for a second, wait a second. Listen, I get that Mike Vrabel did great job. I mean, they didn't have Derrick Henry for half the season. Julio Jones was hurt. A.J. Brown was hurt. They did overcome lots of injuries. But wasn't there a coach who beat him in the playoffs, who resurrected a dead franchise, who just took the Bengals to the Super Bowl for the first time in 30 in my 30 some years, my life? Well, I'm 32. This dude just did that, and Zach Taylor can't get the award. And I know that they just gave 2 awards to Chase and Burrow, and maybe they were like, let's not make it 2 Bengals guys. But I think Zach Taylor deserves credit for what they did there. He's rebuilt this organization so quickly. And it was crazy because just last year, and both James and Jake of Locked On Bengals will tell you, there were pitchforks for Zach Taylor. He's like, you know what, buddy? You don't clean up your act soon, you out of here. And he delivered in a huge way. If the Bengals still stunk this year, one, no one would have blamed Joe Burrow. No one would have blamed Jamar Chase. Everyone would have been like, oh, man, we just need these guys. But they would have said, Coach, get the heck out of here. And he not only did, avoided that, but he made them a Super Bowl contender. And not just, they're in the Super Bowl. They're one step from winning the Bengals' first ever Super Bowl. I'm sorry. I feel like that deserves credit for that turnaround that he generated so quickly. And I know it's regular season awards, whatever, but to me, you got to factor that kind of stuff in. But Mike Vrabel also great job this year getting the Titans to where they were. Obviously, they went through a lot. They overcame a lot. But I look at that, and I think it's hard to look at Zach Taylor. So those are my 2 snubs. I don't think that they're egregious, but I do think that there's different things that the NFL could have done, or the voting committee could have done there that was a little bit better. All right. That being said, We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about this Hall of Fame class because that was announced as well. Bunch of guys in here, and some people that are a little upset about guys who weren't in here. But there were some guys. I think that this was a correction class. These were guys that should have been in for some time. And the NFL was like, all right, we're going to finally push these guys through, make sure that they're, even if you feel like maybe there were some other guys who might have been a little bit more deserving. So we'll talk about that in the next segment here. But first, I got to talk to you guys about Get Upside. NFL fans, this is Chris Carter with an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about. It's called Get Upside. Our listeners are earning cash back for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now. Be sure to use the promo code TOUCHDOWN for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first fill up, and you'll get cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the free app for free. The free app for free. Great stuff there. But that's the awesome thing about Get Upside. When you download the app for free, you can start making money again, up to 25 cents per gallon or more on your first tank when you fill up. And sometimes if you drive a lot, that can add up to $200 to $300 a year right in your pocket. And it goes right to your account through the app. And then through the app, you can send it to your bank account, your PayPal, an e-gift card for Amazon or other brands. All of that right now by downloading the free Get Upside app and using promo code TOUCHDOWN to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. That's promo code TOUCHDOWN on your Get Upside app. We're also brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as we are ready for the Super Bowl. Remember, with the Super Bowl, it's not just about who wins or the final score. It's about all the prop bets, who throws the first touchdown, who runs the first touchdown, who gets the first turnover, who gets the first sack. All those things are going to be on betonline.net. But also, betonline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news all season long. It's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live, real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new and amazing offers available for the 2022 season at BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, rolling forward, let's look at this Hall of Fame class. Now, Hall of Fame class, I thought it was really cool. They had 8 people going in: Tony Boselli, Cliff Branch, Leroy Butler, Art McNally, Sam Mills, Richard Seymour, Dick Vermeil, Bryant Young. Okay. I have long been a proponent of Tony Boselli getting in. When I was a kid and I was a football nerd, there were certain guys who were just really good offensive linemen, and I enjoyed. And that was how also, like, my dad was a football coach, right? And your football coach dads would always tell you to look at the linemen and get in and see who's doing it. And Tony Boselli was just so dominant for his years in the league. Now, granted, he was only in the league for like 7 years or so. He wasn't around that long, so I get why people have been resistant to him being in the Hall of Fame, but he's one of the greatest tackles of all time, and he was a big part of why the Jaguars were able to be so successful early. He really helped out Mark Brunell in those early years when, they made it to an AFC championship game. Fred Taylor running behind him. That was, he's been an unsung hero for a long time. But the biggest one to me that had to happen, and it's sad that it took this long to happen, and I'm very sad that Q's not here because I would just let Q just talk about this, but Cliff Branch. I mean, Cliff Branch for years was a threat at wide receiver that everyone needed to pay attention to. He was a constant threat. For the Raiders, a long time a long time receiver who just was a threat. I mean, as a guy who I didn't grow up during the 70s. I'm 32, but when you're in Pittsburgh, it's like religion to watch Super Bowl highlights. And to do that, even when they're winning Super Bowls, like, people say, oh, it's because you have nothing else. No, I've seen the Steelers go to 4 Super Bowls in my lifetime and win 2 of them. But like when you grow up in Pittsburgh, you watch this thing and you learn not just about the Steelers, but about the rivals that they face. And Cliff Branch was right up there. And he's a 3-time Super Bowl champion, 4-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro guy. Led the NFL in receiving yards in 1974. Led the NFL in receiving touchdowns in 1974 and 1976. Had a 99-yard touchdown reception in his career. This is a guy who was a phenomenal athlete, a phenomenal speedster. And for Cliff Branch, to take it this long for him to get in, it's very sad. It's posthumously. He passed away in 2019. But this is one of those things where I think the Hall of Fame, they needed to get right a lot earlier. I felt the same thing about Ken Stabler, and that he needed to go in when he was still alive. But sometimes things get clogged up, I guess, and that becomes a problem. And I look at this and I say, man, this was a guy who, Al Davis used to complain that the Steelers, the Steelers, when there was one game where it got too cold at Three River Stadium's field froze up, and it kind of kept Cliff Branch from being the fastest man alive as he was on the field. And that was part of the rivalry. It was Mel Blount versus Cliff Branch and all the guys that were there in those days. So Cliff Branch getting in, I thought was the coolest thing. But I saw a lot of complaints. When it came to some of these guys that are in. I do think it's great that Dick Vermeil got in. Even though he only won the one Super Bowl, he had a ton of wins. His character, his leadership as an NFL head coach, you can't mistake that for what he brought to the game. Absolutely deserves to be there. But I saw people that were complaining a little bit about Leroy Butler, and you look at the class and you see I saw complaints about maybe Brian Young, maybe Richard Seymour. I saw some people saying, what about Zach Thomas? You look at his numbers, you compare him to Brian Urlacher. Why isn't Zach Thomas in there? I think some people are still right on about Torrey Holton and Isaac Bruce. How have neither of those guys who were part of the greatest show on turf made it in yet? And to me, that is a good point. But again, this goes back to how crazy it is for wide receivers to get into the Hall of Fame. T.O. had to wait. I think Randy Moss had to wait a year. I think Randy Moss had to wait a year. I might be making that up. But point being, receivers have a hard time. I mean, the Steelers themselves, the Steelers have the most wide receivers to win Super Bowl MVPs in league history. I believe it's because Lynn Swann, Hines Ward, and Santonio Holmes. No other team has three different receivers who have won Super Bowl MVPs. But the two receivers that built their great 70s were Lynn Swann and John Stallworth. It took them until like 2000, the mid 2000s for those guys to make the Hall of Fame. So I think it's part of the logjam that happens at wide receiver. There's so many great talents at that position. It's tough to push guys in unless they're the best of the best of the best. And Megatron, an example of that with how he went in recently. Bryant Young, Richard Seymour, two dominant defensive front guys. I don't have too many complaints there. I think Bryant Young's one of those guys that, I remember, seeing a lot of him, kind of like I remember seeing a lot of Tony Boselli, because, Bryant Young's more of a part of that era of just like, knowing who those guys were, where I wasn't a student of the game back then. I was more just a kid who was a fan of the game. But certainly someone to, someone that I remember seeing all the time in what they do. Art McNally, former director of officiating in the NFL, basically through the golden era of football as they pushed to unite the leagues, the NFL and the AFL, to make the official NFL and the Super Bowl and all that stuff, seeing that into the 90s. No doubt that guy gets to go there as a contributor / official. All in all, a good class, but this isn't the wow class. Like we were just talking about last week, how like Tom Brady and Ben Roethlisberger are going to be in the same class along with Rob Gronkowski and Adrian Peterson. Like what? Like we're all going to be sitting there losing our minds over that kind of a class. I feel like this was a class where the NFL was like, we got to correct some things because there's some guys that still need to get in there who deserve to be in there much earlier than they are. And I feel like that's where they were going with this. So that's my take on the Hall of Fame class. Let me know if you think I'm crazy, if there's people that I'm snubbing from my snubs. I brought up Zach Thomas, I brought up Torrey Holt, I brought up Isaac Bruce. Let me know if there's someone that I'm forgetting that I should be that should get a bigger push to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in the next coming years. I'm Chris Carter, your host here in the Locked On NFL podcast. We're switching to the Super Bowl in just a minute here. I'm going to give you my predictions, my thoughts, how I think the game's going to play out, and my final score prediction of who wins Rams versus Bengals in LA for the Super Bowl this year. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But first, got to talk to you guys about Built Bar. Built Bar is the ultimate protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. It's that time of the year where you start giving up on your New Year's resolutions and you're thinking, man, it's not into it anymore. It's past January. It's hard to stick to my resolution. Guess what? It's easy to stick to your resolution when you have Built Bar on your side. Because when you eat a Built Bar, it feels like you're not even cheating on your diet because it's something that you actually enjoy to eat and it's healthy for you. Have you tried the new Puffs flavors of Built Bars? Because if you haven't, you're missing out. It's one of the best tasting Built Bars that are out there right now. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, and they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors like yummy cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie, and they're all so good. You can go check out built.com to see all the different flavors to make them your favorite. Remember that Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, including the puffs, and they're low calorie but high in protein. The average Built Bar contains only 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, only 4 net carbs, but packs 17 grams of protein compared to the average candy bar that can have 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. There's so many flavors to choose from, which whether it's coconut, almond, peanut butter, brownie, double chocolate, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, and many more. In fact, Built is always coming out with new limited time flavors. Check out built.com to see what's available right now. When you go to built.com, be sure to use the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15, LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next order at built.com. And back here on the Locked On NFL podcast, I'm Chris Carter, your host. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram at Carter Critiques. Again, we apologize for no boy Q this week. Raiders fans and people just generally enjoy our banter. It's unfortunate, but we had some technical difficulties. We hope to get Q back on the show very, very soon. I'm lonely on the screen, as you can see. But anyways, let's talk about the Super Bowl. This is going to be I think it's going to be a phenomenal game. You have two teams with two quarterbacks that have strong arms, a little bit of mobility, see the field well. And I think there's going to be some key matchups here. So what I'm going to do is, before I give my prediction, and I know I've had a tenuous relationship with the Bengals this year because I picked them to not do well, they've done well. I picked them to win, they've lost. I've picked them to not do well again, they've won. I picked them to lose again. I picked them to win again. They lose again, and I'm just like, I'm all over the place with the Bengals. But I think I got it right this time, and it was specifically something that I saw on tape when I was looking at both of these teams over the past few weeks, just trying to analyze how these things have been playing out. Now, first, the matchups for each side that I think are the biggest components here. The first one in favor of the Rams is obvious. It's their pass rush versus that Bengals offensive line. The Rams offensive line isn't that great either, but they're definitely better than the Bengals offensive line. Joe Burrow has been able to survive a lot of things this year, but now you're going up a defensive unit that loaded itself up front. You're coming with Aaron Donald. You're coming with Von Miller. You're coming with Leonard Floyd. You're coming with all these guys that are going to be coming from all these different angles, and they have a secondary behind them that they can trust so that they can say, hey, you know what? We're going to let Jalen Ramsey and Fuller and Rapp and all these other guys work back there while we bring the heat with reckless abandon. And that's going to be a big factor for Joe Burrow. Can he deal with it? He did win a game with 9 sacks against the Titans. That was an impressive feat, but you don't want to live there. You don't want to have to do that all the time. This offensive line is going to need to make a statement. It's also going to need to make a statement in the ground game. Can they open up space for Joe Mixon to take some of that pressure off of Joe Burrow? That to me is a key factor here. If the Rams dominate, and I mean dominate that part of the game, that gives them a serious edge, of course. But if the Bengals can just negate it, just make it so that, hey, Joe Burrow for maybe half of the game is clean and he can make those kind of plays, that takes away a major advantage in favor that the Rams should have on paper. And to me, when I start looking at things, when I'm looking at matchups, who can better neutralize the other team's biggest strengths to victories? And the Niners almost did it against the Rams 2 weeks ago in the NFC Championship game. Jimmy Garoppolo was getting the ball out quick. He was firing it quick. He was firing it fast. I do think Joe Burrow's up against it. He's going to have a similar type of performance, and that's going to be tough because you want to allow Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd to move around and develop more. And it's going to be tough because if he starts doing that and the pressure starts getting to him, that's going to force his hand a little bit. And the Rams do have a secondary that can get after it. So that's going to be a big factor here. But here's my factor matchup thing for the Bengals. And it's not any one person. I know some people might say, oh, what about Jamar Chase versus Jalen Ramsey? Yeah, we're not so sure that Jalen Ramsey is going to follow Jamar Chase. He might stick to one side of the field. Do watch Locked On Bengals and Locked On Rams and their channels to get their breakdowns in this as far as what happened there. They did a great crossover episode in LA and Radio Row this week about it. But I see this being a big factor here. What does Zach Taylor and this team have conceptually to mess up Matt Stafford? Because the Bengals defense isn't elite. They're not, all-time great, but they have playmakers around them. Anytime you got Jesse Bates on in your secondary, you're good. But you looked at what they did to Patrick Mahomes last week. Mahomes was carving him up in the first half, looked unstoppable, was going to just blow this team out of the water. And then at halftime, they made adjustments that Patrick Mahomes couldn't work his way around. They dropped a guy in the spy. They only rushed 3, and they had everyone playing back a little bit and kind of max coveraging him and making sure that he couldn't kill you with his legs. I'm not saying that that's going to be the adjustment on Matt Stafford because he's a different quarterback, but Q and I have made no secret. We are not the biggest Matt Stafford guys. He's even less than I am. I actually think that Matt Stafford earned some serious points for me in this playoff run, especially with the way that he was able to make that big throw in the Buccaneers game to get to Cooper Kupp to get them in range for the game-winning field goal. But for me, if I'm the Bengals, I'm trying everything I can. We just confused Patrick Mahomes, maybe the guy that's about to be the next GOAT quarterback, or whatever you want to call him, or the guy that's going to carry the torch of who's the best quarterback in the NFL now that Tom Brady's gone. You confuse that guy, and then you're going up against Matt Stafford, who regularly throughout his career has been fooled, been forced to make bad passes, and has gotten desperate at times that have put his team really behind the 8 ball. That to me is the biggest factor that can play into the Bengals in this game. It's not Joe Burrow, it's not Jamar Chase, even though they will be a major factor in this game. But I think a lot of this will come down to eventually those guys will make plays. Those the Jamar Chases, the T. Higgins, the Tyler Boyds, the Joe Mixons, the offense will find a way to get some points out, but your defense has to get them on the field more often. Force Matt Stafford into mistakes, and you can win this game. All right, so all that being said, I just said a lot of stuff for one side, then a lot of stuff for the other side. Who do I think is going to win? Now, I've fluctuated about this over the last 2 weeks, but I've come to settle on my gut decision here. And my gut tells me you go with the group that has been putting together a sort of team of destiny type of deal. And I think the Bengals are that team of destiny right now. I'm not saying the Rams don't stand a chance. I think this game is going to go down to the wire and it's going to be close. But I look at what the Rams have done in recent weeks. Look at how they have not really played some complete games. Now, they wiped the Cardinals off the face of the earth in the first round of the playoffs. But remember that Buccaneers game where they were just destroying the Buccaneers? Then all of a sudden the Buccaneers come back and it was 27-3. And then all of a sudden the Buccaneers tie it up, and then they need that field goal late in the fourth quarter to win the game. That's a scary thought. That's a scary thing that you went through there. They had to come back against the San Francisco 49ers. And in fact, in week 18 at the end of the season, they gave up a 17-point lead to allow the Niners into the playoffs by not being able to hold them off. And what did we just see the Bengals do just last week against the Chiefs? They came back when the Titans came back and tied the game up, in the divisional round with the Bengals on the road. The Bengals were able to get a turnover, get back in field goal range real quick, and win the game. And then last week when it came to the AFC Championship game, I mean, we were all watching it. We thought that the Bengals were cooked goose. I mean, you had the Chiefs up 21-3 with 5 minutes to go in the second quarter, and then the Bengals just stormed their way back, tying the game up and eventually taking the lead 24-21 before a last-second field goal by the Chiefs sent it to overtime. That to me is a big factor here, though. This young team has figured out how to come back in big moments, and all it takes is one more time for them to do that. I think that with the way that the Rams have played, they've allowed teams to get back in it, or they've allowed teams to get out in front a little too much for my taste. This is a Bengals team. If you do that to them, you give them the opportunity to play their type of football, to allow Joe Burrow to be in the moment, to come up big, and to be cool Joe the way that he has been throughout these playoffs. And that's your recipe for disaster. So I'm saying right here in the Locked On NFL podcast, I'm picking the Cincinnati Bengals 27-24 to win the Super Bowl. Let me know if I'm crazy. I may be. But hey, we'll see if I'm right on Sunday at the Super Bowl in LA. We'll see if for a second straight year, after it never happened in NFL history, if a second straight year, if the city that is hosting the Super Bowl can have their team win the Super Bowl. Of course, the Buccaneers won it last year in Tampa Bay. This year, the Rams get a chance to win at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. That's your Locked On NFL podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We apologize for not having Q on. We want Q back. He will be back. We just had some technical difficulties. We hope to remedy that soon and have him back on with me on next week's Friday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. But thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate all of our viewers, all of our listeners. If you're watching this show on YouTube, hit the like button on this video. If you could subscribe to the Locked On NFL channel, it'll give you all of our great NFL content with all of our hosts, our sideshows, our clips. We have a lot of different things that come through this channel. Be sure to subscribe there. If you're just a podcast subscriber and you get the audio, we thank you too as well. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey. Be sure to subscribe to us and get all of our daily content. Bo Brack will be back on this show Monday, breaking down what happened in the Super Bowl, and then it all starts over again. All of our great hosts, all of our great content right here on the Locked On NFL podcast and the Locked On NFL YouTube page. Again, I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, @CarterCritiques. We thank you so much for joining the show. I'll be back on with you guys next week.